Mr. Speaker, this morning I was released by my whips to attend a community event in where several of the Pacific community leaders who have been involved in a life-changing program called OTC, or Off the Couch, were celebrating. And this is a program run by Buck and Rukisha Stowers of the Genetics Gym in Manukau. It involves some of the heaviest South Auckland men supporting one another to change their lifestyle through exercise and information. And I took a taxi, Mr. Speaker, from the South Auckland Taxi Association. And soon talking to the taxi driver, I learnt that he was quite concerned about the Auckland super city and the impact of that change on him and his family. And as talking to the driver, he was quite free with his views and revealed to me that he didn't like whom he called the architecture of the super city. Now, he didn't say any names, Mr. Speaker, simply referred to that person as the architecture of the super city and believed that his proposal was going to be, and I quote, a disaster for Auckland. But then he said, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, he's only firing the gun, but the bullets are coming from Roger himself, unquote. Now, the Roger that this taxi driver was referring to this morning is the same Honourable Sir Roger Douglas whose bill we now debate. Now, the taxi driver had a very vivid memory of losing his job during the Rogernomics period, and he did not have a kind word to say at all about the Sir Roger. And I confess, Mr. Speaker, that I did give the taxi driver a bit of encouragement about that. Now, our community, sir, still have vivid memories of Sir Roger Douglas being responsible for Rogernomics in the 1980s. And tonight in this House, 2010, he's introducing a bill based on the same ideological thinking that delivers only for the few and not for the many in our country. Sir Roger's bill, sir, aims to remove all taxes on import. The last time Sir Roger played around with the removal of tariffs, he practically destroyed many of the industries of that time, and particularly in my neighbourhood, in Māngere, in Manukau, South Auckland. Now, the wholesale overnight removal of all tariffs as proposed by the Honourable Sir Roger Douglas's bill is now viewed reckless and would have a detrimental impact on many New Zealand industries and jobs, especially in our manufacturing industry. Now, I want to quote Peter Conway, the Secretary of the CTU, said that although the level of tariffs provide much less security in respect of local industry and employment than in the past, they still make a difference to sectors such as carpets, clothing, textile, footwear, as well as plastics and whiteware. New Zealand's unemployment rate has ballooned to over 7% under this government, and it continues to rise. Māori and Pacific unemployment numbers have hit double digits, and the detrimental impact of being unemployed manifests itself in children going without and missing out on the basic necessities. There are families, Mr. Speaker, falling behind in their power and rent payments and risking eviction and power cuts because they've lost their jobs and can't find another one quick enough. There are families who are struggling to meet their mortgage payments and risk losing their home because they've been laid off from work. And since the election, our unemployment rate has soared and now stands at 30% higher than Australia's, where their unemployment has gone down. If this bill goes through this House, this government will risk the livelihoods of many more families who will lose their jobs as a result of reckless ideology of the past. Now, Mr. Douglas will argue that the tariff imposed on imported goods will hurt consumers. He'll argue that the tariff will force us to pay higher prices for good. Well, he'll say remove the tariff so consumers can have more money in their hand to spend elsewhere. Well, if he's so concerned about this, and if this government is so concerned about additional costs being placed on consumers, it should back down on its proposed increases to GST, because GST, sir, means higher prices in our community. And no one voted for increases in GST. No one voted for higher prices for the basics. And I want to say that we oppose Sir Roger's bill. Labour supports free trade by endeavouring to build free trade agreements bilaterally and multilaterally through the World Trade Organisation system, but not the reckless unilateral action that this bill proposes. New Zealand already has some of the lowest tariff rates in the world
Sorry to interrupt the
benefiting our
member. His
consumers.
time has expired.